Federal funding rejected my film idea at stage 1, which was a tough pill to swallow, but I'm here to tell you today that that's not the end of the world. And I'm gonna share with you in this video what I did instead and what you can do as well if you are faced with rejection, which is gonna happen at some point. Let's be real. Welcome back to my channel. It's Oriana. I'm a filmmaker from Switzerland, writer, director, producer, and on this channel I help you get from idea overwhelmed to a finished film that you're proud of. And I've been doing this for over 20 years. So let's jump in. So we all have faced rejection at some point in our lives and in our careers, I'm sure as well. Maybe you're giving that to yourself right now. How? Well, if you're just contemplating making a film instead of making it, you're not giving yourself permission to make it. So that is an easier hurdle to overcome, and you have to start with yourself. Why? Because if you don't believe in your project, how do you expect anyone else to do so? So where do you get your why from? Why do you want to make films? That's a very essential question to answer for yourself, to have a why. I'm sure you all have an idea, a moment in time when you discovered your love for filmmaking. For me, that was, let me rewind a little bit. When I was in the theater in 1999 watching The World Is Not Enough, the James Bond film with Pierce Brosnan and Sophie Marceau, I saw the title sequence, those naked women on those globes and oil being poured over them, and I was just mesmerized. I could not imagine how that was being done, but I so desperately wanted to know how it was done, and that's where it clicked for me, that I wanted to know the story behind, how are those films made and how can I do it too. Of course, that's, just a fascination, and but I think it's very important to go back to this, this love for the craft, for why do I actually want to make films. You also will have the strength to go forward when there's opposition, when there's people saying, I don't get it, that's a bad idea, why don't you just get a regular job, a secure job. Having something that you are passionate about, that you fill your time with, is so essential. So if you have your why, then it's easier for you to face rejection. Now, my story, I wanted to make films for a long time, but as a teenager I already took action. I developed concepts, and in the beginning you are just so curious, you just start shooting and you just have a basic idea, and I think that's a fine way to start out because it gets some reps in, you get some practice and then you can refine it as you go. But there comes a point where you are looking for support. Maybe your projects are getting bigger, you need some money, some gear, whatever it may be. And for me, I wanted to make a feature, and I've been carrying this idea around since 2008. And I went a lot of places with it, and there was a time when I was applying for federal funding. In Switzerland there are different stages of production that you can apply for funding for. The first one being to just, you have an outline and you want to make a treatment out of it, and then you have a treatment and you want to make a first draft. So there are different stages, and then for the drafts of the screenplays, and then for pre-production, and for actually the big chunk for being able to film the whole thing, and then also for post-production. For this early stage, I think the grant was about 10,000 Swiss francs that I would have gotten if I had been accepted, and I was not. For me, you can always make a story out of this, and that's important. You can make it about your self-worth and am I good enough, and should I even move on with my career, or you can make a huge deal out of it, or you can try to see it from their perspective, which I tried to do, and I looked at the feedback and I just had to say, well, the feedback is so minimal, they don't really go into the whole project. I don't think they even took the time to read the whole thing that I sent them, maybe. Or they didn't get it, they were just on a completely different page. So, there's already a slight disconnect happening there, and that's what I could figure out. And that might be, yes, I'm not a well-known filmmaker in Switzerland, so I'm not a safe bet in that regard. I didn't have a big production company backing me. That's a second thing that they might consider. That's a valid point. And third, the topic is just pretty out there. It's pretty spiritual, and in the history of what has gotten funding from the Swiss government in the past, those type of films didn't have a great record. So those are three objective points that I can now see that were not doing me any favors in front of that board. And apart from that, I can also, look at myself, my work from this stage, because it was many years ago, and see, okay, I did not have a fully fledged out story yet. Of course, if you're applying to write a treatment, you're not supposed to have the whole story figured out. But so the concept was not clear enough, and you can have all those different reflections of why you gotta know. But the important thing is, don't fall into the victim mindset here and say, they just want to be mean to me, or they just don't get me. Yeah, they might not get you or your idea, and the question is why. So is this even your audience that you're trying to reach, or is it the wrong audience that you're trying to reach? And then in that case, if you were making a horror film and the panel on that jury just says horror films are crap in general as a genre, we don't like horror films, then you wouldn't have a chance in hell of getting a yes there. You know what I mean? So, and all that is to say, always own up to what's my part, what can I do better, but also, am I asking the right people to support me, or am I just asking people that don't resonate with this kind of idea? And, there's so many different films out there, so many different people watching films, so having a match in the story that you're trying to tell and the audience you're trying to reach, that's where you can hear more yeses. So, for me, it meant protecting myself and just taking a step back, and I let the project sit there for a while. And I went on to make All In. And with All In, I just found other ways to fund that film. It was basically funded in the private circle of my family and friends, basically. And that was okay for a short film. Be enough of a professional to, not take any kind of criticism personally, but also take it constructively. So be willing to work on yourself, on your project. And if you're asking people that you trust for feedback, ask them specific questions like, which characters can you see clearly when you're reading this script? You know how they act, how they are. Can you see them as a full-fledged human? Which would be a good sign. And which scenes do you think are like not clear or strange, or you don't know why they're there? Questions like that can help you improve your project. So all that is to say, don't wait for permission. In our society, it's come to a point where, you know, we're always seeking external validation, and of course getting federal funding would be a huge validation. But it's also about, do these people even, you know, live on the same frequency as me? The story that I'm developing right now does have a spiritual aspect to it, and there's a lot of people that are thrown off by that, and I'm still working through how to navigate that, because when it comes to, you know, showing that film around down the line, I don't want to scare people off. I want to include everyone as much as I'm able to. If you believe in your project, that's a great thing. Look for feedback from people that you trust. You know, they have the same sense of, you know, what makes a good project. And also look for who might my target audience be, and then see some people through there, like, are you interested in my film, you know, and you might get more yeses than nos. Other ways how to finance your film is what you can find in the video links up here, the one about if you have no budget. So check that one out next. If you're ready to jumpstart your story and get past the blank page, check out my story workbook. It's linked down below. Thank you for being here, and please comment down below. What are you working on, and what are your biggest roadblocks? See you in the next one. Until then, bye.